Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Jesus reminds us to watch for the signs of his return. Today we will explore further what we are seeing in our times that line up with what signs he said would indicate the potential of the end and his return. We will also discuss the practical meaning of this as we watch and as a remnant prepare as he so leads. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. Here we are on End Times, Good Times, End Times Friday.
Good morning and happy April Fool's Day.
Yeah, did you know that the rapture happened already?
Is this your April Fool's joke?
I guess so, because you and I are still here, so I guess we're still here. April Fool's.
Oh goodness.
So as we consider the end, we are processing. We finished last week Revelation 22, where Jesus spoke, and he says, "Don't add to it, don't detract from it. It's all going to happen." Right. Matter of fact, he said it's going to happen quickly, and you and I understand that it means imminent and going to happen. Right. And remember his time frame.
What he says will happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
And remember, he sees he says that I'm the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. All eternity he sees already, and for him, when you think of eternity, even 2,000 years is quick. So,
right.
He just said, yeah, it's going to happen in his time. Jesus actually said, because they said, well, when exactly is this going to happen? His disciples asked him. And he said, well, even I don't know. Only the Father knows. And he hasn't revealed that to me, which, by the way, and this is kind of funny, he said he hasn't revealed that to me, which means he asked. Because he didn't say, well, I don't know, I didn't ask him.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Interesting,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. Hey, I asked him. He said, well.
And he hasn't told me yet.
He said, even, and this is part of, in a sense, the beautiful walk of God, is that even to his own son, who's God, that said, well, when is all this going to happen? Well, son, actually, I'm not going to tell you yet. You'll know later. And that's a lot of how, in my relationship with God, it kind of works that way, about its relationship, its dialogue. I know you're asking this question, but I'm not ready to tell you everything yet.
Right.
Wait, take it step by step. I'll reveal it as I will, because I know best, everything. Right. So it's really beautiful. I had an experience actually up in Winter Park. We went skiing with our leaders, and we had gone skiing with Scott and Kristen Cornell, who had a car. My skis were in their car, and they pulled in the driveway. And I said, "Hey, Scott, take my skis out because you're going to be leaving early in the morning, like at 5:36." Yeah, sure. So said goodbye to them. They left, and they're up in the mountains driving down to the airport. So I go back. Actually, I'm in the Word, doing some abiding in the Word. And God says to me, "Do you know where your skis are?" and I said, "Yeah, they're in the garage." He said, "Well, you better go find them." So I get up. I go in there's two garages here in this place. I go to the garage where his car was. It's not there. I said, "Oh, they must be in the other garage." It's not there. I said, "Oh, he must have taken him inside." And we go in. I go in, and it's not there. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he took them inadvertently. He's got my skis, or they're somewhere else that I don't know. Actually, I was gonna kind of go and call him and say, do you know what you did with him? And God says, well, keep looking. So I go back out in the garage, and there's nothing. There's not there. And he says, look in, and this is Dave Dunkel's bag. Look in that bag. And his bag is all closed up, wrapped up with ropes for travel. I got to undo all that. I got to undo all that, open them up. That's where my skis were. And Dave had inadvertently taken my skis, put it in his bag, and his wife's skis, Melissa's, were still in the garage.
Interesting.
And if I wouldn't have found them, my skis would be in Tampa, Florida. And I wouldn't have been able to ski the rest of the week. And by the way, Melissa was going skiing in New Hampshire. She wouldn't have had her skis, So
right. Isn't that funny?
And what struck me about it, again, this is as we look at God's will, and we, it's like, well, you knew where they were. Why didn't you just tell me? And he says, well, I love the relationship. And I want you to discover, remember, I'm going to lead you step by step by step. And this was a microcosm of how I'm going to lead you and say, hey, do you know something? No, I think so. We'll go do that. Well, it's not there. We'll go do that. Well, what do I do? Well, here, look here. And there was the answer. He could have told me that right up front.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave Duncan's got your skis.
But isn't it, there's some tenderness actually, I think, in the way that he's training, because Dan and I are seeing the same thing right now, just some very specifics in how to pray and what to do, but next steps, and then dependency on asking him then just for the next thing, and then just for the next thing. And I do honestly feel like it's a training ground, particularly as we propel forward into these end times, that he really wants us to learn to walk with him step by step, and to be so attentive to asking for the detail and stepping in faith and trusting, and then asking again and learning to walk with him that way, because it's going to be important.
Yeah. And it really, it does highlight the beauty of the relationship, and that reminding of me is Rich, which is the way I'm structured anyway. It's like, come on, like Linda, she loves telling great stories. And a lot of times I'd be like, okay, come on, get to the punchline, will you? And God says, don't ask me and demand an answer. Let me walk you into it. And it's going to be discovery and truth, and enjoy the walk. And don't leap to, I need an answer. Just be willing, even with his own son, he said, I'm not going to tell you, when the end's actually going to come. And it's kind of wonderful. And so, in the process, it's such a beautiful way of him leading us into, like you and I keep talking about, the best and none better. And the best and none better includes God's relationship with us and the joy of that relationship. And that's something that I've appreciated more and more and more, because we're kind of task oriented and decision oriented, and hey, we got to get there. And hey, I do know part of the joy is to experience me, and I get to experience you. And remember that that's part of the process. And you and I even last week, as you can see, my background is different today. So I'm at home. We're in the middle of a snowstorm. We got 10 inches, probably going over a foot here in Colorado. And I'm not going to be able to drive out of my driveway until they get it plowed, which would be, they wait until the storm's over.
Right.
So I can't go to my studio, which is my office in the Denver Tech Center. And a week ago I was in Dallas, and by this time this is aired, they would have seen that background. And I like to remind everybody, as Kathy and I need to try to help. We do tape these ahead, so we say certain things are true at the moment. By the time it airs, those things have become different.
Right. Some of the current events that we talk about are not always real time.
Sometimes it appears that we're super prophetic. hey, I think Russia's going to go to war, and then we say that, and they say, well, he already did, Okay, but so we were down in Dallas, and we have technology that we ship to our guest,
Right.
and they have a setup, so their quality is very similar to ours. So, well, I shipped it down there, so because I knew I was going to be down there,
Right.
so I set it up, and it would work if I was a guest, but I'm the host, and
Right.
I've got the technology that it does the mixing, the recording, all of that. And when I set it up, and we have this beautiful, kind of a microphone that you would see on like Jay Leno show when he used to be, or Jimmy Fallon, a stand-up mic. Well, we got
Right.
we got feedback. Uh, so when
Yeah.
you talked, it came. I'm listening through my computer, and it goes into the microphone. So we're hearing you twice. So like, well,
Right.
this ain't
Right.
gonna work. I don't know, what am I gonna do? My thought was, I guess we can't do this. Well, I'm upstairs in my in the theater room of my son and his wife's and the two grandsons, at a table. On the table
Right.
is a set of headphones that they use for
Gaming headphones, nonetheless, right?
gaming, and God said, try that. So
Yeah.
I hooked that up, and like, hey, that worked. We could do this.
Right.
And there's a slight, and they'll see it on the video, is because the Zoom is capturing our screen. I have a recording system that when you first transition over to the screen, I have to take that off, so people are going to see a glimpse of my recording technology, just briefly.
Right.
Uh, so anyway, it was like, hey, that worked. So now God says, well, you know what? You're going to need it, because you sometimes travel, and you really need to have this with you in case you ever need to do this again, or you can't get to the office.
Right.
Okay, so I ordered
Yeah.
it. I ordered it. It came, and here it is. We're recording, and there's a big snowstorm. I can't get to the office. If I
Yeah.
had God's not
And he
set that up.
alerted you to that before, so now you were ready for this. So
Yeah,
it's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah. And by the way, I would have never thought of headphones with a microphone as the way to go.
Right.
I just wouldn't have thought about it, But he just said, "Well, try those,"
Right.
and so the beautiful relationship with God is, I think he's funny. I think he's uh, lovely. He's very inquisitive. He's asks me questions. He walks me step by step as he does you, and there's a joy to that.
Yeah. An
And
adventure to that, right?
an adventure, knowing, well, he's going to lead me to best and none better, and why would I not want to walk
Right.
with him? And be careful, Rich, to demand more than he's willing to give at the
Mm.
moment. Just follow and the process and say, I don't
Yeah.
understand. I don't get that. I don't understand it. What do you want me to do? And he doesn't mind repeating it. So
Right. Right.
as we kind of end again this section of the uh, end times, we went through 22. We wanted to revisit and go back actually to something that we talked at the very beginning, when Jesus was asked about this. And we're going to read what he wrote, and then we're going to talk about some of the things that are happening today that really line up with this. Now, again,
Right.
every generation can look at and say, well, maybe this is it, and we can say the same thing. That's why he says, don't be so sure. It's this tension of yes but not yet.
Right.
It's coming. It's going to happen. He says, watch the signs and be aware.
Hmm.
And so I just believe that he's highlighting us. And the way I look at it, by the way, is you could definitely, and you'll see this. We could definitely make a case for, boy, it seems like this is it, and it's happening,
Right.
going to come soon. And by the way, the answer could be yes. And someday,
Hmm.
interesting enough, someday, guess what? It's going to be that way. It's going to
It
happen.
will be. Yes.
There'll be a day when it happens. On the other side of it, if it isn't it, I think that we
Hmm.
are being informed that there's going to be a big change in the world economically, culturally, the ability to speak out truth, and we'll be able to process it. So I think in any event, he's saying, I'd like you to really pay attention and get
Right.
ready, and
Because some things are shifting
don't
here.
make assumptions and say it doesn't matter, or
Mm,
hey, God will take care of me anyway. He says, remember, the way I take care of you is let you know ahead of time what to do.
right.
So
Right.
let's go to Matthew 24. Go ahead and read
Okay.
one. Let's go 1 to 14 first of all.
Sure. Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, Do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us when these things will be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the ages. And Jesus answered and said to them, Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All of these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come.
Yeah. Okay. So he says, let me tell you, and he was on the Mount of Olives. Now, by the way, um, on the Mount of Olives is the Garden of Gethsemane. Uh, so
Okay.
when he's sitting there, and we would think, particularly you in New Hampshire, me in Colorado, we think mountain. Well, it's not a mountain. Um, it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
it's just elevated so that there's a slope to it. So when he was
Okay.
sitting on the Mount of Olives, he was just a little bit higher up than the flatland, and I'm talking maybe 500 feet, maybe.
Yeah. So
So
maybe like a big hill
like a big hill,
kind of
a big hill.
picture. Yeah. Okay.
So he's at the top of it is the Mount of Olives.
Mm-hmm.
So he would be sitting up there, and Gethsemane is about midway down the Mount of Olives. So it's just, he's
Hmm.
probably
Okay.
100 yards above the Garden of Gethsemane. And
Okay.
then he would probably, by the way, when they went back into the city, they walked through the Garden of Gethsemane. Uh,
Hmm.
because when you go there today, it's all walled off. So
Oh,
there's
interesting.
walls. They have bus
Is that
tours.
to protect the site
It's to protect the
for
site,
tours and stuff?
and
Okay.
it's attached actually. There's that they build a building there, and
Okay.
so if you're on a tour, and there's literally when in the high season of tourism, when before COVID and all that, there'd be literally 20 buses lined up,
Mm-hmm.
and you enter the garden and you go around kind of a big U, and there's people there,
Mm-hmm.
and they're saying you can't stop, get going, get going, get going, and so you got to watch it. You really can't stop because there's hundreds of people behind you. So, but when Jesus was there, it wasn't any wall, and there
Uh-huh.
wasn't any tour. It was just the Garden of Gethsemane, and
So they
uh,
would have passed through it going down.
they would have
Yeah.
passed through it. And there's olive trees there. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and by the way, it's interesting enough. It's the same inside the garden. It's the same as when Jesus was there. Those
Mm.
trees are still there, and so I had a
Oh,
tour.
that's amazing, right?
I had a tour over there, And we were praying. There were 16 of us, and we had our own little minibus, and we prayed. Most tours have an agenda, and you show up
Mm-hmm.
here, you get on the bus here, you go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one. The way we do it is we don't have an agenda. We have today we're going to head this direction. I've got things lined up, but
Right.
we're going to let the Holy Spirit decide what we're going to do. So the first stop was Garden of Gethsemane. So we go around, and across there's an alley, is more of the Garden of Gethsemane, and there's a locked gate there, and there happened to be a guard there. So
Mm-hmm.
the Holy Spirit says, "Go ask him if you can get in." So I go over there and said, "Hey, I've got a small group. Would you allow us to come into the garden here and just stay here?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And he opens the gate with a key, and we go in. And he locks the door. So it's just us.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to everybody,
Oh,
we're going to
nice.
go through the verses of the Garden of Gethsemane in the Gospels, and then we're going to stay here until the last person has surrendered their will to God. And you go
Mm.
through the process, and don't just say I did. Like Jesus, is it in your heart? And don't leave until he did. Well,
Oh, that's so
it
beautiful.
was, and we were there for about 2.5 hours of just
Mm-hmm.
again, individuals and couples were processing surrender with God. But he's sitting on the Mount of Olives, right above that. So he knows, by the way, because remember, this is getting close to when he's going to go to the garden. He knows what's going to happen in that garden, as he's walking through that.
Right.
And he says, "When will these things be?" He said, "First of all, take heed that no one deceives you."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so think of deception. How can people get deceived? What is deception, first
Um,
of all?
well, it's false,
False.
first of all. So, in some way, shape, or form, receiving information and taking it in, that isn't truth.
Yeah, it's
Um,
false. That's received as true.
yeah.
And so we would believe it, like, well, yeah, it's true, but it's been deceived, so that it's
Mm-hmm.
not like, well, yeah, they're trying to deceive me. They actually did.
Right.
And if you ask me, I believe it to be true, but I'm deceived as not. So that
Right.
a couple things that are happening on that is that um, deception is manipulating and degrading the truth, so that
Mm-hmm.
Barna, by the way, just came out with a study that said that, like of the millennials, only 15% even care about the Bible, and even less think it's true. Okay,
Wow.
so how were they deceived? Because their experience with churches, etc., they didn't teach them. The truth is that
Mm.
all the scriptures are true, and we're supposed to operate that way. So without truth, how do they act?
Right.
They act by feeling and what they call
Right.
relativity. Well, if the culture
Mm-hmm.
says this, I guess it's
Right.
okay.
Or even what we want to believe. It's
What we want to
possible
believe.
to believe a lot of things that are incorrect about God if we're not basing it on truth.
That's right. So if we're not going abiding in the word, and believing the word's true, and then applying that to us, we will be deceived. And he says, "Many will come in my name, saying,
Mm-hmm.
I am the Christ," and will deceive many. Now, this is tricky because people say, "Well, I don't see many people saying that they're the Christ."
Right.
And I say, "Yes, you do." I said, "You got to look at it a little bit differently." So if you will, we'll come back here, but go to John chapter 14, and read verses just 1 through 6.
All right.
And this will help explain Jesus' statement. John
John
14, 1,
14,
1 to
1 through
6.
6.
Yep.
Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. And you know the way to where I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you are going. How can we know the way? And Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
Okay, so Jesus said, as Christ, remember, Christ is Son of God, Messiah, and he says, I am what? The way,
The way, the truth,
truth,
and the life.
and the life. Okay, so when he says, so let's jump back to Matthew 24, and he makes the statement that many will say, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. Look at it
Yeah.
differently is people will say, this is the way and the truth.
This is truth. This is life.
Follow
Yeah.
this, and so it's accelerating of people that are saying this is the way, and it ranges all the way from just the pure political. By the way, people follow political party and say, well, my party says they've decided that that's the way, the truth, and the life. I'm going to follow that.
Right.
Or
Right.
or false
And in fact, they've put their hope in politics.
yeah, or false religions, or different ways to get to God and say, this is truth, and it's all over the map. Well, it's accelerated dramatically. He says that many will say and deceive you. So what does that mean? Here's the way. No, you don't need to abide in the word. You don't need to receive that. That's not the way. It's this way. And by the way, people are buying it. They're deceived.
Right.
So that's happening. He said,
and we're seeing that all over. I think when you talk about the millennials, I mean, it obviously happens to many more groups than that as well. But I see so many really looking feel like you hear commonly, if you talk to people about their faith, oh, well, I'm very spiritual. That's a common response, especially I believe in that age group, but across the board, I'm very spiritual. And so they're believing or looking for something, but they are just looking at it kind of in the big spiritual world. Well, some force is going to move me to here. And if I do yoga here and I do this here, and, it's all going to get me wherever I need to be. I'm spiritual. So I have what I need. I have the way, and this works for me. And isn't that good?
Yeah. And let's look at, he actually explains why. Go read verses 11 and 12 again. He tells us this is why it happens.
Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. Okay,
so he's talking about the love of himself. Is that, and remember we talked about the churches in Revelation that he actually spoke to and said, you've lost your first love, and you've gone cold. And so he says, the way it happens is that why would people easily be deceived? Well, because they haven't learned and experienced the full life of God and the joy of God and the truth of God. And what I say is that there's not many marketers out there because everybody's talking about God. And see, the millennials, kind of, and it's interesting when you look at the kind of the cultural issues of it, but they I think because they were trying to figure out life and say, well, what I've observed doesn't seem to be it, and so they're highly skeptical. And it's going to be, prove it to me. And so when you say, well, Jesus is the way, and they say, well, why? Well, because it says so in the Bible. And I said, and he said, well, why care about the Bible? You don't live the Bible. You're not experiencing this stuff. So the love of many grow cold, and lawlessness abounds, which means there's no truth. And we're seeing that everywhere, by the way, just even in the aspect of the nations and the people of the nations, even following law anymore, is that a lot of times it doesn't even matter. So it's flipped to we can just do what we want to, and there's no consequence to it. So the lawlessness isn't developing. So he says because there's no marketers who are sharing the experience of the truth of God. And by the way, it's not because it's theologically true. It's got to be true of reality in my life
Right.
that I've experienced in it. And he says, it's going to grow
And,
cold.
and so truly sharing, like you said, not just knowledge of, but living it out and being his glory on display.
Be in it, and then what happens, as you and I know, because this is what happens with our ministry, with abiding and retreats and the content we have and the courses we have, that people say, well, why is that so? We can say, well, we can guarantee you, if you have a heart to go, that God can do this, because that's what we've experienced, and they see it, and they can testify to it, and then their comment is, well, is that possible for me? And that's why we're trying to broadcast even more and more and more, is that the answer is yes. And don't be deceived as if it's not possible. That you get to go to heaven, but you don't get to live out the abundant life. No, it's real. And then he says, by the way, he says, you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, and then the end is not yet. We're in the middle of wars and rumors of wars. Russia has invaded Ukraine. It's a messy war already. There's a lot of fear about because they're squeezing him economically. By the way, just read yesterday that there's a potential that Russia will default on some of its debt. And if it does, now that might be purposeful, by the way, because they're developing their own system, so they could almost, like, I don't even care.
Yeah, they've partnered with the Chinese, for a payment system. Yeah.
And that could tank everything into real economic morass. But they're at war. They're rumoring more war. Is it going to expand? Is it going to go into NATO countries? Are they going to use a nuclear weapon? Iran, by the way.
And there's even been threats, definitely making threats that as the West provides financial and military support in different ways, that they are saying, hey, by the way, Russia's saying, by the way, we can penalize you for this.
Right.
Do you realize that?
That's right.
So they're making some threats.
And you got North Korea, who's rattling their sword. You got China, maybe getting ready to head into Taiwan. So these are wars, rumors of wars, and it's present. Now remember, throughout history, there's wars and rumors of wars, but it seems like it accelerated right now. It says nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. So that nations right now, you can see it just by listening to the news, is they've decided, I'm against this. I'm against your nation.
They're taking sides, yes.
Taking sides. And nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, so that the spiritual of God against the spirit of the world is getting more pronounced. He said then there'll be famines. There's a prediction right now that we could be headed to the greatest famines we've ever had because of not able to plant correctly. There's not machinery to harvest it. There's not people to harvest it. There's all kinds of
and even some of the natural disasters that have occurred.
Natural disasters.
And then now ripple effects of the war too. Yeah.
Pestilence. Pestilence that we would call COVID-19 pestilence. And what's going to happen next. And so that's happening. Earthquakes is accelerating around the world.
Yeah, well, and in fact, when we're taping this, yesterday there was a big earthquake in Japan.
That's it.
And
it's going to happen. He said, these are the beginning of sorrows. And then he said, then they'll start delivering you up to tribulation and kill you and be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Many will be offended, and they'll betray one another. And he's talking about people who are so-called believers. He said, we're going to have people come against us. But even people that we know, and this would be people in the church, people in our family, are going to betray us. And they're going to hate you. And the word hate is strong emotion against you because you don't agree with them. And I can't tell you how many families actually I've dealt with recently where they're having this great divide of they can't imagine, why are my children so strong against me because I won't do something or I don't agree with something. and they
Right.
literally come with this emotion of you would call it hatred. It's just opposition, that they come against, and so that's occurring. And he says, you're going to be offended and you're going to be persecuted. And just today, um, this is in Virginia. I don't know if you followed Virginia at all, but they have they're trying to the governor there. By the way, I know the governor. I actually know him. I've met him.
Okay.
I met him, Glenn Youngkin. He's
Okay.
a kind of a strong Christian leader. He's been active in Christian activities for his whole life, which is how I got to meet him. And he got elected governor of Virginia.
Okay.
Well, they had this educational process where the ACLU come out and said, you can't bring, what would be biblical perspective into the system, and you can't allow that to happen. And by the way, you can't let parents do it either. And so, and he signed a law that said, yes, you can. Well, they filed a lawsuit against him, ACLU. Okay, so what he did was he went and got ADF, Alliance for
Oh, interesting.
Defending Freedom,
Mm-hmm.
who is a champion of just using the court system to just walk through
Right.
the law, just the law. That's it. The law says,
Mm-hmm.
this is what we do, and they stand up for Christian causes, basically. But the neat thing about ADF is that they're just focused on law. So they're
Mm.
not trying to say you should. It's just, well, here's what the law says. So what
This
you're
is what it says.
what
So
you're com-
let's interpret it and
when you're
enact it
coming against
correctly.
something that's not right, we're going to do it. By the way, our ministry does retreats for ADF, so it's really cool. But
Mm-hmm.
so anyway, um, they went to get ADF to file on their behalf. Well, just today, the ACLU filed a cease and desist order, which they have to get it approved because they labeled ADF as a hate group.
Wow.
And they said they're not even going with our argument. We don't even want them to be able to
Mm-hmm.
represent anybody because they're a hate group and we're approaching it that way. Now, why could they say that? Interesting enough, the law has been building to where you can label things as hate groups and it actually is acceptable. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And this is something to really watch. But what does that mean? Lawlessness.
Right.
That you
Right.
can't rely on that, and you could now create your own law and say, well, anybody that
Mm-hmm.
disagrees with us, we're going to call them a hate group. And if they're a hate group, we can shut them down.
Right.
And that's what they're trying to
And
do.
limits their platform to speak and all kinds of things.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
And so he says,
Very fascinating.
he said, lawlessness, cold, you're going to go cold, fall away.
Mm-hmm.
He said, by the way, the gospel, while that's going on, the gospel is being preached throughout the
Mm-hmm.
world, which it is. So there's a
Right.
choice that's being made of, do you want to receive Christ as the answer or not?
Mm-hmm.
And he said basically, as it approaches to the end, yes, there'll be a invitation to that, but most people will
Mm-hmm.
fall away, and you who believe are going to be persecuted. So
Right.
we can almost safely say that how soon will that be? For we like in America that we really haven't had a heavy dose. We've had there's people that are persecuted for sure,
Right.
and you could lose your
But boy,
job
when you
and
look at other countries and what they have faced,
yeah,
we haven't even dipped our toe in
yeah,
persecution yet,
yeah. Even
comparatively.
Jesus said even to the point of you'll be killed, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and there'll be consequences to that. So as we look at the signs and what Jesus said to pay attention to, we can take every single one of these and
Mm-hmm.
say, I can kind of see how this might be it.
Right.
Particularly when the one thing that overrides it all is when the tribulation comes. It's the beast, and the beast, as we've talked about, remember, is one world government organized in 10
Right.
units. Well, we just saw it happen with COVID. Is the world really surrendered to a one world
Mm-hmm.
government in terms of how you handle COVID and what the mandates are? And we saw, wow, that was lightning speed that was able to do that. And again, as we understand it, COVID took us from what I call the normal to the abnormal. And people, and even
Right.
even worldwide, people got kind of what I call weary of it.
Right. Yeah,
And just, I
absolutely.
want to get back to normal. I want to get back to normal. When the chance
Mm-hmm.
came to get back to normal, they do. Well, when the tribulation
Right.
comes, it's going to be the opposite.
Mm.
So what they're going to do is create something abnormal for you to get weary of it quickly. And then they say, okay, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
give you a solution that's going to get you back to normal. And
That makes you feel normal.
everyone's going to
Yes.
say, hallelujah, great. Well, we could see
Mm-hmm.
how it is happening, you know. And by the way,
Right.
there's agencies, there's different groups publicly stating we want to have one world government because they think
Mm-hmm.
that's the way to solve the problem. So we've seen a lot of things happen. So as we talk about this, the signs and the activities that Jesus said pay attention to, I believe again, pay attention. Don't put our head in the sand. Say it doesn't matter. It matters.
Right.
Again, just look at it. Even if this isn't going toward the end, we're in the process of evil becoming more prominent throughout the world. And we're going to have to deal with that because we'll be in a different position than we've been. And he says, I need to get you ready for it. I need to have you understand it. And so our encouragement, as we said even last week, of don't add to or detract from the Word, is we'll go to the Word, look at what it says, and ask God to show you what would He have you understand in terms of the question. And again, it's really simple to me. Father, what do you have to say about this for us right now, since you want us to pay attention and you told us it's important? I know you don't want us to stop living. I know you don't want us to, go away and just, be hermits and
Right.
wait for the end to come. But at the same time, you don't want us to be ignorant of what is coming.
Yes.
And so, you and your group, you and your spouse, you and your family, you and your small group, it's worthy of asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you have to say to us? What do you want us to understand? And is there anything you want us to prepare for? And it could be just a heart thing. It could be just get ready for
Right.
persecution, and here's how I want you to handle that. So there's no
Mm-hmm.
formula to it, but it's rather, as we summarize this,
But
and
we need to all be teeing up the question to him.
we need to be asking the question because he said, pay attention, and we could see,
Mm-hmm.
man, everything that you just listed, it's happening. So
Right.
is this close? I remember close can be decades or years.
Right.
Anyway, we'll continue next week. We're gonna go into more depth, and we're gonna kind of use these Fridays now to kind of backtrack and go into specific things and talk about things that we actually didn't spend time on, like Gog and Magog, and
Gog and
uh,
Magog. I'm
uh,
excited to hear
yeah,
about that.
and
Yeah.
some of the other elements of it, so that we will do it. And we'd encourage you, by the way, that now that you've been through the series, we actually would really welcome you to send us questions and say, I'd
Yes.
like to know more about this, and then we'll actually pick that up, because now we have kind of a free opportunity to backtrack anywhere along that system and discuss things openly, and it'll be fun. So we don't need to be sequential anymore. We can just dip into something and say, let's talk about that. So we will.
Great.
So Kathy, we will see you again next week. Hope you have a good
Looking forward to it.
April 1st day, and we'll pick up our series
Thank
on the
you.
covenant.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Happy weekend.
Yep. See you soon.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.